Yes. So, is everybody back? Vijay, Abhi, Anshu, Hari, Shiva, Venkat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So let me go to
absolutely.
the documentation. As I showed yesterday, it's something new. It is available from Spring 5.2 onwards, right? So go to web servlet. This is what we are learning, Spring MVC, right? MVC. So web flex we will be learning as part of reactive programming. But now it is web servlet and we are on here, right? Functional endpoints. Functional endpoints. Excuse me. Yeah. So with this model, functional endpoints model, the way we expose the service will change a lot, right? So here there are two concepts. One is annotated controllers and another one is functional endpoints. If you choose annotated endpoints, we already learned this already, right? At controller, at rest controller, at request mapping, at get mapping, put mapping. Those things we will be using in our annotated controllers. But when it is coming to functional endpoints, no more annotations, right? It's going to be fully zero annotations we're going to use. So, but before that, is there any impact to our existing flow? No, there is no impact, right? There is a zero impact. It is still same like our REST controller, right? It all starts with the web.xml file, servlet, dispatcher servlet. But the only thing which is going to be changed here is instead of using request mapping, handler mapping, we're going to use router function mapping, right? We're going to use router function mapping to identify the correct mapping class and method, right? And instead of using request mapping handler adapter, Spring is going to use handler function adapter, right? So that is what is the only difference, and no more view resolvers. Anyway, no more view resolvers. So the only underlying architecture got changed, but it's a huge impact to the developer because till now how we are doing the things will change a lot, right? However we are doing, however we are writing our endpoints, the way it's going to be changed a lot, right? So no more no more controller rest controller request mapping. It's going to be handler function and router function, handler function and router function. So only these two concepts. First one is handler function and the second one is router function. So handler function is going to take care about controller class. It's like alternative for controller plus request map. Okay, it's an alternative for at controller at rest controller. So let's add at rest controller. That would be great, right? At rest controller and request. So going forward, no more rest controller, no more request mapping. It's going to be handler function, handler function. But how are we gonna identify for which request which method has to be executed? That is going to be identified by router function, right? So here we do the routing, right? Which request has to be executed, which handler function we will configure in router function. Okay, so it is alternative for request mapping, or else let's go with the specific class, right? Request mapping, handler mapping, and the above one handler function is an alternative for request mapping handler adapter, right? Request mapping handler. So whatever the job the request mapping handler adapter does, it's going to be taken care by handler function. whatever the class, it's going to be taken, it's going to be uh, performed by handler request mapping, handler mapping. It's going to be part of router function, right? So let's see how do we write, right? How do we write? Let's go to our mobile service, right? Whatever we implemented using annotations, let's implement the same thing by using functional model, right? So let's mark it as mobile service functional. Let's create a separate project, right? Let's go to our microservices workspace. If you want try, you can try it parallelly, or else you can do it later, because this is new concept, right? So it's better to look at the code and understand things later. You can try. Okay, so I will show one or two endpoints. The remaining endpoints you have to implement. Okay, yeah, it's loading. My Eclipse workspace is loading. Okay, let me close all these. Create a new Spring Boot project. So file, new Spring Starter project. Yeah, let's give this name, mobile service functional. The project name itself, mobile service functional, and the artifact name also mobile service functional. So mobile service microservice with functional endpoint. So let it be the base package is com Spring Boot MSK mobile. Next, so we're gonna add web, the same dependency, dev to same dependency. There is no difference, right? Web and dev tools. Yeah, let's click next, finish. Let's click next, finish. Let me close the client project. Yeah, Eclipse may take um, a while to create the project. So meanwhile, let's close this project, client project, right? Let's close it. So the project is created with the basic architecture, right? Mobile service functional application. Yeah, the name sounds good. Let it be there. Okay, so it's a simple main method Spring Boot application, and this is going to be run on Tomcat because we added web dependency, right? So we yeah, so web dependency added. So it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be the same thing. Just a moment. Let me switch on my laptop power. So it's going to be the same Spring starter web, right? So we are going to run on Tomcat, no difference, same dev tools, right? So REST controller or functional endpoint, at least the pom.xml file wise, no difference, and application file wise, no difference. It's going to be the same thing, no extra configuration required. And moreover, we're going to copy few resources. For example, we need this service, right? The service, because service is not going to change anything, right? Service is not going to change anything. So we're going to use the service as is, right? And the model class also, mobile.java, right? Mobile.java. So it's going to be the same thing, right? So it's going to be the same thing. Init mobiles, we're going to fetch the mobile data. So the backend wise, no difference. Only the part which is going to be changed in the functional endpoint is a controller. So let's paste it here. Let's paste to the service class. We needed service. I copied and pasted. It is taking time. Okay. So let me refresh this. Okay. So the only layer here it's going to be changed as mobile controller. Come on. What's going on? Okay. Copy paste is taking too much time. Copy, paste. Yeah. So let's change the package, right? Let's move this into service package. My God, what's going on? Okay. Let's move this into service package. Okay. Let me restart the Eclipse. It's torturing. Oh, okay. I think there is something running in the background. Let me check. Come on. So automatic updates automatically find. I checked unchecked everything. So available software sites. Okay. Automatic updates we disable. But why it is taking this much time? Show only latest version of available software. Open wizard report. Uninstall or update. Okay. Ask me what to implement. Okay. Thank God. Yeah. So let me restart. Okay. Meanwhile, we will look into the handler function snippet, right? So handler function is a um, functional interface. It's going to have only one method. Okay, only one method. So you before we look into uh, the signature of handler function, I hope you remember, right? Function. What is this? Would you able to recollect what is function?
Yeah,
It's a functional interface.
Functional interface.
Right, functional interface. So before we look into the signature of handler function interface, we will try to write this implementation, right? So even we can write it. It's not that much complicated. So here we go. So handler function, we know already function, right? So it takes P and it returns R. So the signature of the function interface, something like this, right? It has only one method. By default, every abstract method is public. We don't need to specify that explicitly, right? Public abstract, not required. This is already by default public abstract. it has only one method. What is that? Apply, right? Apply, and it's going to take a t type. It can, the t can be anything, and it will return an r return type. Right? R can be anything. So that is what is a function in Java, right? Method can take any type and method can return any type. So when it is coming to handler function, so there are few limitations we have. Our handler function not supposed to take everything. It has to take only server request, right? The input is server request and the output is server response. Server response. Okay, so this is what is my handler function. So when we know what is the input, right? When we know what is the input, we no need to specify, right? When we know what is the input and output, if it is fixed, we no need to use generics. We no need to use generics. We can directly write, right? We can directly write one handler function. So it's going to have a method called handle. It's going to take server request, and it's going to return server response. So this is what is the uh, declaration of handler function. It looks something like this. But the only small change here is we not only allow server response, we will also allow which is the child of server response, right? Maybe in the future, there might be some new implementations will come. So we want to support all server response types. It can be a direct server response or it can be a child of server response. If I open the signature of handler function, you see the same method declaration, right? Okay, so it's an interface. It's present org spring framework web reactive, right? Reactive function, web reactive function, the function, and it has only one method. What it takes, server request, and what it returns, not this one. If it's not reactive, it should be just function. Okay, spring web functional web framework. Yes. API. Docs.io, Spring Web Framework reference, no. So it's a reactive function, web reactive function, no. Um, so let me give the full package. Okay, let's go for router function. From there, I will navigate it. So there are two things. One is reactive and non-reactive. So by default, it is going to the reactive model. Okay, so that's why, yeah, it is a bit confusing. Um, router function is not reactive. Yeah, servlet function. So this is what I'm looking for, right? Servlet function, not react. It is servlet dot function. So this is router. Let me open. Let me open the Angular function. Okay. So should be web. The package structure should be web servlet. Yeah, web servlet function. Uh, web servlet function. Here we go. It will have only uh, two classes. One is a router function and another one is handler function. Adapt handler function. Okay, one is a router function and another one is handler function. So don't get confused. We are still in servlet model, right? So that's why we are looking into servlet. Reactive will come when we jump into the reactive, right? So right now it's going to have only one method, and then it's going to take input. It's going to take input of server request. It's going to take input of server request and the return type, right? Return type T extends server response. Either you can return server response or child of server response. Look at this, right? At functional interface. At functional interface, which means it is a functional interface. You can write lambda expression. Now your controller method can be a lambda expression, right? Your controller method can be a simple lambda expression. We will write the lambda expression and we will see that example, right? So this handler function, so remember this package structure, very important, because there is a slight confusion. Org spring framework web servlet. So web servlet alone will support spring MVC. If it is not servlet, if it is reactive, then it should be webflex, right? So it's a reactive project. So right now we are in spring MVC. That's why we are looking into this project structure. Web servlet function, and handler function has only one abstract method. It is a functional interface. You can write lambda expression. So your controller method can be a simple lambda expression, right? Simple lambda expression. So instead of question mark, he said T, and here it is T. So the T is the type of server response, or it can be its child type, right? T extends server response. We can return server response or it is its child, right? So I think the Eclipse is ready now. Yeah. So we created a basic project, right? We created a basic project. Let's move this mobile into mobile service. Yeah. Let's move this mobile into mobile service. This time it is it's a bit faster, I think. Okay. So yeah, it's moved, right? So there is another error, mobile.java, right? Model class is missing. So let's copy the model class also, right? Only the controller section alone will change. No model class change, no service class change, no repository change, right? No database layer change. Only one particular controller alone is going to change. Okay. Uh, So that is what we're gonna do the changes in the functional. So that's why I'm just copying this model and service. Model and service, we copied. There is no right. Some exception we are throwing, right. Let's put that back to runtime exception. Runtime exception. So we can do this exception handling later. It's more or less the same like how we did in the uh, servlet annotation methodology, right? So I'm just going to throw runtime exception. I'm just simply going to throw runtime exception. So this is our plain old service class, right? If you want all mobiles, we call get all mobiles. We want to get mobile by ID, we call get mobile by ID. And if you want to save the mobile, we call mobiles.add. And if you want to update the mobile, then we call mobiles.set, right? So delete right now we are not supporting. That's fine. Okay. So let's write the controller point, right? Now let's write that controller section. So no more controller, as already discussed, no more controller. It is going to be functional endpoint, right? So mobile, the naming convention, we're gonna use mobile functional endpoint. Okay, functional endpoint, no more controller, and this class is going to be annotated with component, right? No more controller, no more rest controller. So here each method, so if it is not functional endpoint, we would have been writing rest, right? Rest controller, and that is what we would have been doing, right? And here we are writing a request mapping method. request mapping method, but this time it is not REST controller. So what we will do, we'll add component instead of request mapping method. We have to provide a handler function implementation, right? We have to provide a handler function implementation. So what is that handler function implementation we're going to provide here? For example, we want to get all mobiles, right? Get all mobiles. So first let's write that method, right? Public list of mobiles, right? List of mobile, yes. And here we call the method, right? Method name is get all mobiles, right? Get all mobiles, and we gonna call this service, right? Auto wide mobile service. Provide private mobile service, then can call get all mobile. So this is what is a REST way of doing the thing. This is what we are doing in a REST model, right? The REST model. When it is coming to the functional model, you're not supposed to return a list of mobile. You have to return the return type of handler function. What is the return type of handler function? You have to return a server response. Going forward, all your endpoints, right? All your methods, request mapping methods will return a server response, and all your requests, right, will take server request, right? So the input is not Cobra, Spring Web Servlet function. So input is servlet request, sorry, server request, and the output is server response. Input is server request and output is response. So we need to prepare the server response object, right? We need to prepare the server response object. Server response has utility methods, right? You no need to use new operator. It already has so many utility methods. Just call, like response entity that okay, that status, like that we will write. So here also it's going to be the same. Server response dot okay dot body. So here we would like to keep, right? Here we would like to keep the all mobiles, right? Get inside that body. I'm gonna call get all mobiles dot, yeah. So you don't need to say anything. Yeah. So this is what is our functional handler function method, right? Functional handler function. So this is equivalent to handler function implementation, right? This is equivalent to handler function implementation. A method takes server request and that method returns server response. That is what is a handler function. So we provided implementation, right? We provided implementation for handler function. If you have doubt, you can just check this here, right? You can, if you have doubt, you can just check it, right? Handler function get all mobiles, right? I can assign that, okay, equals to get all mobiles. I can call this method, I can call this method, and I can pass the request, right? So actually we're not supposed to call this. We're not supposed to call. It's going to be automatically called by, it's going to be automatically called by Spring, right? Get all mobiles, all endpoints, request mapping, it's going to be called and executed by handler adapter. We no need to worry. Okay, we no need to worry.
HA Sunil. HAND.
Yeah. Okay. So return return type of method is missing. Return type. Check method return type to what? Why we are returning server response, right? Okay. We need to use build. No, it's fine. We are returning server response.
You have to call mobile service dot get on mobiles, right? Or
No, it's an instance variable you can
you
call.
are using direct variable.
Okay, but anyway, this is equivalent to handler function. We are not going to call this method. This is going to be called, right? This is going to be called automatically, right? This is going to be called automatically by the uh, handler, right? So it is request, not sorry, it is what is that handler function adapter.
Router.
Handler function adapter is going to execute that method, so we no need to worry. So this method is equivalent to one handler function. So if you have multiple methods are present in rest controller, then you have to provide those many implementations, right? You need to provide those many implementations, right? Those many instances of handler function. So each request mapping is equivalent to one handler function, right? Each method, each request mapping method is equivalent to one handler function. So we are done with writing request mapping and controller, right? With kind of similarity. Now we need to configure the router, saying that okay, when you get a URL saying slash slash get all mobiles, then this method has to be executed, right? So something we need to configure. But before that, let's move this into a different package, right? So let's move this into functional, functional, yeah. Just move this into functional package. Okay, so no more controller. It is going to be functional or functional endpoint. Anything is fine. So now we need to configure the router, right? We need to configure the router to send the request, right? When there is a get mobiles comes, we need to configure this request to this method. So public. So the return type is router function. Okay, return type is router function. Yes, it is a servlet function. Yeah, you're gonna return server response as an output. Fine. And we call router is going to take care about all the routings. Okay, so you're not supposed to create router function object by calling like new router. That is not good. So already there are few existing libraries are available, right? So we're going to use router functions utility class. We're going to use router functions utility class. No more router function equals to new router function. So that is not the case. You have to call router functions dot route. So it is functions, right? Functions. So the utility class is router functions. Yes. Dot root. Okay. You're gonna get the router functions builder dot build. So you're gonna get router function object. You're gonna get router function object. Yes. Got the router function object. Okay, so we have to use router functions dot root dot build. But in between, we need to configure which method, which HTTP method, and which URL pattern goes to which handler adapter, right? So that configuration we need to do, right? That configuration we need to do. So we already created this mobile function by using component. Mobile function by using component. So you have to auto wire this here, right? You can auto wire or you can create. You can remove that um, component and you can try that by new operator. That also fine, but let's try with the um, auto variant first. Okay, so we already created this endpoint. Okay, so yeah, here you need to focus little bit, right? How we can map request to handler function, request URI pattern to handler function. So there are existing utility classes are available. We no need to do anything. Like when there is a get method, right? This URL, this handler function is already available. So these methods are present inside request predicate, right? Request predicate. So let me open that class. Request predicate. So here you have a request predicate class, request predicate class, and we can't directly configure this. So to use request predicates. Request predicates. Yeah, see here we have methods, right? Put, get, post, head, right? So like this we have, when there is a HTTP get and this URL pattern, HTTP get method and this URL pattern, it has to go to that particular handler function. So like that we're gonna configure, right? Like that we're gonna configure. So that is what is the, right? Let me mute. Okay, so we're going to call get. So request predicates, right? Request predicates that get, and this url goes to this handler function. We directly wrote the lambda expression. We don't do that. We will just call, right? We will just call get and predict get, and we pass the handler function. So small change I'm going to do. So it won't be the same like how the uh, documentation, right? Because they wrote the direct lambda expression. We will later we will do that, right? First we will call uh, this one normal imperative model coding. Then later we will change it into lambda expression. So let's import request. Request predicates dot get. So we need to pass the pattern, right? So it's going to be, what is the request URI? Get hyphen all hyphen mobiles. Get hyphen all hyphen. So we can put router dot. Okay, once we can pass here itself, router request predicate. So it's going to be the first argument. So get, and the second argument is for this url which method we need to execute, right? So this is going to be get all mobiles, right? We're gonna call get all mobiles. Okay, so this is how we usually configure. I think build is optional now. Okay, we are done with configuring router. We are done with configuring router. So the first argument is what is the pattern, and the second argument is what is the handler function. So when there is a request comes with a get all mobiles, right? When there is a request comes with get all mobiles, then it will execute mobile function endpoint dot get all mobiles, right? It will execute this method automatically. So that is what, right? That is what is a complete functional model. If you want, you can remove this component. If you want, you can remove this component. Okay, and you can create it by using new operator that we will try later, right? First we will start this. And we will hit the service. We will hit the service. Let me close all. Only focus on the application, right? So only focus on mobile service functional application where we configured router function, right? So where we configured router function. So when we send this request, the response will be coming back from get all mobile. So let's start the service. So right click, run as Java application. Yes, the server is started, port on 8080. Okay, so you see, right, there is one request mapping, right? Router function mapping, get method with this URL, it goes to mobile service functional application, some lambda expression, right? Some lambda expression. So let's go to your browser and type localhost 8080 get hyphen all hyphen mobiles. Right now only one server is running on my machine on port 8080. we are going to hit our functional endpoint, right? So we got the response, got the response. So this is how we usually write route functional endpoints, right? If you don't want to use this component auto void, what you can do, you can simply remove this part and you can create it by using new operator inside this bean. You can create it by using new operator, and you can call, right, you can call the particular method whatever you want to call. So go here and just remove this component, just remove this component, save this, come back, save this. So semicolon is this. Just add the semicolon. It's like pure Java configuration with full of functional model. So it is started, right? It started. Still it is registered. Let's go to the browser and refresh. Still get the same output, no pointer exception. Okay, somehow the new operator is not working. So we got mobile function, we got line number 19. So it's coming from here, but actual adapter. Okay, let's use the component itself. Okay, so that the new operator will work, but it is not working. Okay, let's use the auto add itself. Okay, so let's give the chance to Spring to create the object. So it started. Now just refresh, you get the data. Okay, you get the data. So new operator is not. And one more important thing and one more biggest feature here is, instead of writing a separate class, right? If it is a single line of data, right? If it is single line data, instead of writing a separate class and maintaining it, what we can do, we can write a lambda expression, simple lambda expression for implementation of this, right? For implementation, right? Handler function implementation can be, right, a simple lambda expression. So what we can do, we're gonna pass server request, right? Request we're gonna pass, and we're gonna return object of server response, right? Whatever you are returning here, just take that and put it, right? Just take that and paste it here. We need a mobile service, right? Just do auto aware of mobile service. Okay, just do the auto aware of mobile service. Okay, so from here we will directly call mobile service. Just keep the semicolon. Okay, so no more separate endpoint required, right? Just I deleted that endpoint. I just deleted the endpoint. So the server is started, restarted. There is some error key. Where is it? Okay, import is missing, right? Just do a control shift O. Again the server restarted. Let's take this and go to new window, right? I'm just going to press enter. You see, you're gonna get the same data whatever you got in this browser, right? This is new window. You click enter, you got the same data, right? It's simple, right? It's very simple. Entire controller class request mapping method is now a simple lambda expression. No more controller, no more rest controller, no more request mapping, no get. Nothing is there. A simple lambda expression can serve your HTTP request, right? A simple lambda expression can serve your HTTP request. Okay. So this is what is a new way of writing functional endpoints in Spring MVC. Okay, and there are only two major concepts here. One is the router function, and another one is handler function. Right. So handler function is an equivalent to a request mapping method, and router function takes care about routing the request to corresponding handler. Right. So router function will take care about just redirecting the URL to corresponding handler. Okay, so we can remove all these methods and use import static, right? Import static Java 5 future. So the things looks much better. We just do import static. Okay, and The same thing is applicable for router functions also. Start. So we can remove this router functions, right? Router functions you can directly call root and you can directly call get. So root first method is what method? First one is a mapping, and the second argument is handler implementation. And if you want to write one more root, yes, you can do it. You can do it, and right, and or else you can do one more root, right? One more root you can do it. You can do it. One more. So this is what it is available in the documentation, right? So routers functions that root that get the first argument, right? First argument is uh, this one, right? First argument is the endpoint, sorry, URL mapping, and the second one is a handler function. Handler function. So, and there are some things like nested routing also there. Nested routing, yeah. So this is what we do, right? Get root, get, and let me try this, right? We are passing root and we are calling the get, right? Instead of doing that, let's call the get. Okay, get. Yeah, so get will take, let me check the signature, right? Let me check the signature dot get. First one is a pattern and second one is a handler response, right? They will work. So remove this, close. So get this request goes to this handler function, and finally you have to call B. Finally, semicolons. Two dots, right? That's why we are getting error. Remove the extra dot. Yes. So if we have one more close parenthesis missing. B. Okay. So if you have one more mapping, then just copy this get and post it, right? So it's like get mobile, right? Get mobile uh, by ID, right? By ID, and it goes to another method. Maybe like let's try this say hello, right? One more method, a simple say hello method, right? It's going to be our say hello, and we would like to create, right? We would like to return a simple string saying that welcome to Spring Boot functional programming, right? Yeah, not Spring Boot, Spring MVC. Let's Spring MVC functional endpoint. Okay, so we can say hello and you get that response. Just save this. It started, it's up and running. Let's go to browser and type, remove this get on mobile and just say hello. You'll get the message return, right? So this is going to be this much easy. Writing endpoints, right? Controllers or RESTful web services are going to be this much easy, right? Pretty easy with functional endpoints. No more controller, no more request mapping, no get mapping, no put mapping. It is just a simple route who takes care about executing your endpoints to mapping your endpoints to that particular handler function, right? So here this server request going to have, right? Let's look into the API now. So this is how we do configure the router function, and we have some nested router functions also. Yeah, yeah, nested router function. So when it is a person ID, it goes to this get person, right? Person, and the ID goes to handler dot get person method. If it is no ID, it goes to all, right? All. So we have mobile by ID, right? So this is how we should implement it, right? Mobile by ID, this is how we should implement it. If it is a post, it goes to handler create function, right? So when we have mobile by ID, then it goes to that particular method, right? Let's write that. Let's do one thing, right? So let's implement this router nested function. So the first is path, right? Path is going to be our mobiles. Okay, so let me comment this. Whatever we did is the basic one, right? So we need to implement mobile by ID. So we will do one thing. So we will call first of all route. Okay, route dot, it's not router, right? Route or root, anything it's fine. Dot path, path. So the basic path is mobiles, right? Slash mobiles, mobiles. And here we will write our second section. Right? So here we'll have yeah. So path is mobiles, mobiles. So here we're gonna call, we're gonna call this nest method on the consumer. Yeah, nest. Inside this we're gonna write our internal mappings, right? Get, I know this is not that much readable like functional annotation model, right? So this is little complicated when we compare when we compare with the imperative code model, right? Like RESTful web services and functional endpoints. RESTful web services has good readability, right? Good readability, and we can easily debug. But when it is coming to uh, the functional endpoint model, the readability will get decreased, right? The readability will get decreased. But this is going to be pretty fast once we do hands-on, right? Once we do more hands-on, then we will get more. Uh, the things can be delivered pretty fast, right? So look at the signature, right? Nest. Let me do it here one more time. So what is the signature of nest? Right, we have to pass the predicate, request predicate, and second we have to pass router function, right? Second we have to pass another router function. So we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna accept if it is a JSON request, right? JSON request, the first parameter, JSON request. Okay, so we're gonna call this router, and the second one is going to be another router function. Second one is going to be another router function. So second parameter, right? B2 B2. Okay, B2 B2. Then we're gonna call get method, right? So we already implemented this mobiles, right? Get is going to be get all mobiles, and yeah, get it's going to be get all mobiles. Finally, we're gonna call this build. Okay, so let me write one more get mapping, right? Let me write one more get mapping. Media type. Okay, media type dot application slash JSON. Yes. So one get mapping. It goes to this particular mobile. So no more requests, right? So like if it is simple mobiles, it goes to all mobiles. If it is simple mobiles, it goes to all mobiles. If it is an ID, right? If it is an ID, then it goes to, if you get an ID, if it is an ID, then we will call our next method. So in the mobile service, we have get mobile by ID, right? Get mobile by ID. So we will call that method, right? We will call that method mobile service, mobile service. Okay, let's write this lambda expression. Okay. Um, or else let me write the functional endpoint class. Let me put it. Restore from local history, whatever we deleted. Okay. Okay, so one is get all mobiles, and another one is get mobile by ID, right? Get mobile by ID. So one argument is server request, and another argument is get path variable. And here we're gonna get ID, and it's going to be for int ID, and here we will call get mobile by ID, and we pass that ID. gonna get mobile by ID. We passed ID. So let me try. I never tried this before, but let's say the method name, right? Get mobile by ID. Get mobile by ID. So we're gonna get ID from path variable. ID from path. Just go to the second mapping and call instead of service. Let's whatever this functional endpoint. Let's call the methods get all mobiles. Here it is going to be get mobile by. So how to implement this ID? Get person. Okay, I think let's go inside that method. Let's see if there any way we can collect the path variable by using the request. Request dot get. Okay, attributes body method params path variable. Yeah, this is how we should collect. Not no more path variable. This has to be implemented like this. So ID it's going to be int ID. Sorry, it's not semicolon equals, right? Yeah. So cannot convert from string to int, right? So let's do like this, right? Integer dot parse integer dot parse int. Okay. Yes. Now no more errors. Yeah. So no more path variables, no more annotations. It's full of raw Java code we're gonna write. Yes. So let's go to the browser. Okay. Say hello. We deleted, right? Say hello. We deleted. So we have only mobiles or mobile slash ID. Mobile slash ID. So say hello. We get 404 error code. 404 error code. Let's try mobiles. You get all mobiles. You just pass one particular mobile ID. You see that particular mobile ID information, right? Mobile ID information. If you pass something wrong, then you get exception, right? Mobile not found with given ID. So it's the same response. It's going to be request wise. It's going to be same response also same. The only thing which going to change here. The only thing which going to change here is it's going to be no more controller, no more annotations. It's pure Java functional coding, right? Pure Java functional coding we gonna write. So this is how we do write using a separate class. If you wanted to do it by using a lambda expression, right, you can do it like this. Right? In the last routing itself, if you would like to write a lambda expression instead of writing a separate method, right? Instead of writing a separate method, you just copy paste this entire thing, right? Instead of routing, you just copy paste. We need this say hello. Let's keep it as this say hello. So we have one more get, one more get um, mobiles. Got. So this is for path. After path also you can do the get. So direct say hello goes to this mobile just mobiles goes to all mobiles. Mobile slash ID goes to get mobile by ID, right? Let get mobile by ID. Remove this and write a lambda expression. To write a direct lambda expression, we need the service, right? We need the service. Let's go to the service and just call service. Just write a lambda expression. Request, and we're gonna call mobile service dot get on mobile. So it's yeah, it's Okay, sorry, it's not this, right? We need to return the server response, right? So this is going to be server response, but okay, but body execution. Yes. Okay, the same thing is applicable for the second also. But what you need to do, you need to do this curly braces, get the ID first, right? Int ID equals to request arrow, then first you get the request. So it's going to be integer dot parsing um, request dot sorry request dot path variable, and the path variable here is id. Okay, and let's call service mobile service. Okay, mobile service dot get mobile by id and pass that id. This entire thing has to be wrapped inside server response body, right? Server response body is called just return this. Okay, so just put the semicolon, space, return space. Okay, so this lambda expression equivalent to the method which we wrote in the functional end, right? So it's done. Now let's go to the browser and just say hello. You can say hello message. Then here, let's say hello. For mobiles, let's go to mobiles. You get all mobiles. Okay, and for mobile particular mobile information, just pass the mobile ID, get that particular mobile, right? So no class required, right? No extra functional endpoint class also required, not required. You just directly call this, right? Just directly call this. Let me put all these things one by one, right? Just a plain router with separate functional endpoint call, right? So this is our old plain router. Yes, so this is basic we started, right? Plain router with lambda expression, router with nested with functional endpoint invocation. uh, yeah. So this is router with nested with separate lambda expression, right? So let's do the auto of mobile service. It's there here. Just yes, start over mobile service, that compilation error will be gone. Okay, so this is how we write functional endpoints. Okay, functional endpoints. No more controller, no more REST controller. Going forward, this is what you will be doing in your Java or a Spring Boot microservices, right? Writing RESTful web services in Spring Boot will be like this in the future. What's up, guys? It's full of like pin drop silence again.
Trying to understand
Yeah,
first
trying to
time.
understand.
Okay, it's
Sunil,
come. Yeah.
one thing you did that import static, right? Like what
Hmm.
was that?
Instead of calling static method by class name, we can directly call, right? So import static will help us calling this method there. If you
Okay.
comment this import static, what will happen? You have to do request predications dot like that. You need to write.
Correct,
It's
correct.
not
Okay.
required. You
So you are
directly call.
directly calling. Okay.
Yes.
Where is functional interface, so only one method is there. Okay.
No, it is not functional interface. It is Java
Oh, it's a
1.5 feature. Okay.
feature.
If
Okay.
any
Okay.
static methods you would like to call for a couple of times, it's better to use import static. So you can directly go ahead and use this accept instead of calling class name. It is less readable, right? Comparatively, import static is less readable, right? But still, we can use it because we are using IDEs, right? Just put the mouse on it, you will understand which method, which route method you are using. Okay,
Okay. Okay.
and this is what is the completely an advanced one, right? You can simply delete that endpoint. Okay, I'll put it back for your reference purpose. Okay. Otherwise, we will get a compilation error, right? So, but without functional endpoint, without controller, without REST controller, without request mapping, without path variable, without produces, consumes, right? If you would like to write any Lambda, I mean any functional interface or RESTful web services, this is what we gonna do. For sure, the future will be like this. Okay, I know this is going to be for you guys like one more time completable feature and method injection day. I told right yesterday itself, but this is completely latest, right? Even companies are not using this because this is a month's baby concept to spring itself, right? Month's baby concept to spring itself, and you should be good in functional programming to write this, right? The people who has background of Angular, React, AngularJS, React.js, or who working on Kotlin, right? Kotlin or Groovy, for them it's like a piece of cake because this is what they are doing for so many days. Okay, we are like Java guys, we are too much late. We are now started adapting these things. Okay, Java, from Java point of view, we are started adapting this, but it's very late, but future it will be like this. If you started
So
writing
Sunil,
the
you mean to say in the React and the React code, I mean, in the Angular React JS, the same syntax?
won't be same. It is different technology, right? But things you can compare. There we have router, we have component. Okay, router component. How we are doing without lambda expression? How we are doing mobile functional endpoint component, right? Component. So it's a kind of same concept over there. It is kind of similarity you can get it. It's not like 100% is same. If you really understand these concepts and going forward, if you implement the same concept fully, then learning Angular or learning React.js, it's going to be pretty easy because the naming convention and the concepts more or less it's same. Okay.
Sunil,
Yeah.
what is the advantages with the existing controller model?
There is no difference in terms of performance. Both performs the same way, but the difference will come like we're going to use more functional programming if you use functional endpoints, less readability. Both has their own strong points and their own loopholes, right? The pros and cons
Okay.
each and every concept has. It's up to you what you're going to use, right? It's up to you what you're going to use. Nobody is going to force, right? Nobody is going to force to use functional endpoints. Nobody is going to use annotated, right? It's up to you. But if you started writing
Yeah.
functional programming, it is good because future is going to be full of functional programming.
No. What my question is, what is the motive to implement that functional endpoints? Because existing is a excellent one. What is the motive?
That is what I told, right? Why Java introduced functional lambda expressions in Java 8. Without lambda expressions, we are doing it, but still, why uh, we have got the lambda expression? It's like functional programming we want to adapt, right? So other technologies, just keep aside, right? Java, just keep aside. Java, keep aside. Go to
Okay.
other technologies, Python, Kotlin, Groovy, Go language. They're saying that, hey Java, you don't have functional programming. We are doing it, right? We are better while writing a functional programming. You have to write too much code to implement a simple say hello method. If to write a simple say hello method, you have to write a separate class, maintaining separate class, load that class into memory. You are doing so many things to execute a simple functionality, right? Look at this say hello.
Yeah.
Without this, it's going to be a separate controller class annotated with um, et controller or rest controller, writing a method, request mapping, loading that class, loading that method, right? All these things are like memory wise, they are little costly, and maybe with respect to Java 8, there is no performance difference. Maybe in the upcoming versions, right? Every 6 months, Java is going to release a new version. Maybe in the future, for functional programming, it would perform better.
Earlier we have that MVC model. That is the reason we have all these model controller like this. Now we are doing all this in one line. Is a good architecture.
Both are same. So nothing has changed, right? The architecture wise, nothing got changed. It's still now no MVC. View got deleted. Only MC, right? No MVC. View got deleted. It's MC. Model controller. That's it.
Even controller also we didn't write, right? That is in main class we have written that.
It
Service
is.
logical.
You can move it into an endpoint class also. You can do like this or you can do like this. Both are same. So controller is equivalent to an endpoint, functional endpoint. And this component is equivalent to REST controller, and this handler function is equivalent to request mapping.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
things
Here we have service response, right?
yeah, the
We
service
can
section.
return subclass also.
No. Don't do too much. Don't do too much functional programming, right? So subclass is not alternative for functional programming. Where you can do completely replace the components with the functionality, functional programming, just replace that.
Yeah, I agree. No. What my question is, we have service response. How it will like earlier we have Jackson response, right? Suppose you are returning mobile. Here we are converting into mobile into Jackson response. How this will be happening in service response case?
Oh, the service response case, right? The body is going to be converted into Jackson response. So look at this body, right? Server response is considered like complete HTTP response. You think like that, right? You saw that response entity, right? We already discussed response entity. So it's kind of response entity. So response entity, you can set status, header, response body. Response body is going to be the Jackson body. Right? You just call OK, right? OK dot body. But it's a kind of same thing, right? Response entity, and we can call OK dot body, right? Body, something like that.
Yeah. So server response like a service response entity.
Yeah, it's kind of similarity.
Okay. Yeah.
So the
So
body
you are
section.
saying, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, body section will be converted into the Jackson body. So if I send this request on Postman, it will be little bit clear. So you see that body, whatever we are keeping in the body, that particular part will be visible in the Postman body section. So the body is the HTTP response body. OK is the header status code. Okay. Once it is up, I will hit the service from Postman and show you. Yeah, you are
You
trying to
showed
ask
something like T extends some.
Predefined handler function.
No. In the service response, we have some extents you told, right?
No, that is what? That is handler function declaration. Showed handler function declaration. How the handler function interface looks like. Right? So here, T extends server response. You can return server response or you can return child class also.
Okay.
Maybe
Child class means server response is object. Child class is string. Is it acceptable?
No. You have to create inheritance. So maybe if you don't like server response, right? Like my server response, right? You can do my server response.
Oh, we
which
have
is
to manually. Okay.
any customization you wanted to do. You
Customization.
can.
Okay.
So
Got it.
this, right? You need to provide unimplemented methods, right? So instead of using server response, you can return child class, right? Child class.
I thought existing
No.
inheritance.
It's going to be a predefined class because server response, I believe it is an interface. Okay, so it's an interface. So you can't return the server response directly. You should be returning the implementation of server response. So that's why that's T extends. You have to return the server response or any child type. If you would like to create your own server response, you can. You have that feasible.
Okay, got it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So let me start the service for one more time. It's going to be no more MS right? It's just localhost 8080/mobile. Let's start with our favorite, say hello. It's up and running. Let's send this, hit it, you get the response, right? Let's go to, it's going to be plain text this time. Let's go to mobiles, you get the mobiles information in the JSON file, right? JSON. So the status is a server response. Okay, right? Okay means 200 and okay. In the body, whatever you are keeping in the body will be visible in the response body. If you just send any particular mobile ID, you get that mobile ID response. I can understand it's not that much easy. It's little complicated, right? The one good thing here is the underlying architecture is not changed. It's still same dispatchers are late. Okay, same dispatchers are late and web initializer. The concepts all are same. The only particular part which changed here is the part which executes the controller and the request mapping. If it is an annotation model, then it's going to be request mapping, handler mapping. If it is functional model, then it's going to be router function. So who is going to execute this router function mapping execution is going to be taken care by router function mapping and handler function adapter. Okay. Yeah, we feel little difficulty while writing this code because this is something new, right? We are doing REST controller request mapping for so many years. We might be feeling right comfortable with that, but this is better than that, right? This is comparatively easy, and we can deliver the things fastly. Pretty easy, and we can deliver the things fastly, right? If you would like, if you need, you can convert this entire thing into a single line. This curly braces. This it's going to be a simple single line implementation. Just break this body. That entire multi-line lambda expression can be converted into one line. Right? So close the nest. Yeah, close the nest and close the path. Okay. So nest closed. Nest closed. It's confusing me. Where is this get closed? We close the body, we close the get, then we close the nest, we close the nest, we close the path. Yes. Okay. Done. Yeah. Of course, it is not good, not that much readable, right? Not that much readable, but it's good. Wise like writing fast development, right? And less resources going forward. What will happen, when we jump into reactive, no more servlet. What is the biggest thing is going to be changed tomorrow? Maybe next couple of days we will be learning reactive programming, right? Reactive programming. So in spring frameworks, but in spring framework we have it's not a dot projects, it is last. Okay, you see that we have reactive programming. Once we jump into reactive programming, there is a slight difference will come into this with respect to the reactive programming. So here we don't have dispatcher servlet. We will have a different concept. So servlet is heavyweight. We will remove that servlet and we will have only a simple interface which supports lambda expression, right? So your server can perform better. When we go to reactive programming, we will remove the servlet. But anyway, let's not get nothing too much about that at this point of time, right? At least the MVC functional endpoint, right? Spring MVC. So right now we are in web servlet. Web servlet supports functional endpoints. Here, at least the life cycle or the architecture, nothing got changed. Underlying architecture will be taken care about. Okay, about the execution. The only part which is going to be changed here, no more annotations, no more controller, no more REST controller, no more get mapping, put mapping, nothing. It's going to be pure functional router and handler definition. Okay, if you feel difficulty while writing the lambda expressions, you write a separate endpoint class and you can call, right? How we did here. This you can put. Okay. But anyway, this is nothing urgent. Okay, the world is not using this. Right, the world is not using this. Still, companies are using controllers, REST controllers, right? Request mapping, because for them, learning factor also is a considerable thing, right? So as Spring is introduced functional endpoint, they can't implement it, right? Because their resources also should have a knowledge to implement this. But slowly the things will get changed. Maybe 2022 or 2023, if you open any Spring Boot microservices project, you will see this kind of. By that time, you're not supposed to get surprised. It's better to get surprised in 2020 itself and spend some time and learn this concept. Okay. Yeah, slowly the things will change, because if you just go back to the Spring version history, right? Spring version history, when the Spring released with version 0.9, right? With version 0.9, it's like XML configuration. So when Spring released version 2.5, it is annotation. Then people felt happy, hey, this is much better than the XML, right? So performance wise, there is no difference, but we don't need to write too much XML configuration. Once the Spring releases Java configuration, now the world is using fully Java configuration. So when they released that version, people might have felt a little difficult, right? Because we need to spend time to learning. Obviously, we hate that, so we feel like a little uncomfortable with this model. But going forward, now we are Spring 5, right? We are Spring 5. You see, everything is going to be Java configuration, full of Java configuration, right? So that is what it's the same concept is applicable for functional endpoint also. Don't think that like future will be annotated controllers. No, at least some portion, maybe not 100%, at least like 50% of the things can be written in a functional endpoint mode. Okay, so we have scope for sure. Obviously, the world will start using new concepts, right? Just check the history, right? Check the history. Like not only Spring, right? Java, right? Java. So people started using Java 1.5 features. Now people started using Java 1.8 also. Nobody is saying we don't use, right? Because this is how a new technology comes, which when new version, new technology comes, which simplifies our developers life easy, but it is little difficult, right? Adapting things we maybe little uncomfortable for us. That's why we feel little difficult. But for sure, maybe this year or end of this year, or maybe next like year early days, we will be slowly migrating to Java 11 for sure. Okay, next more stabilized version of Java is 11 for sure. You see that. Okay, maybe 2020 or 2021, right? Early months of 2021. Mostly by 2021, like most of the systems will be migrating to Java 11. Okay, for sure. So it is good. It is better. It's good. Learn new things. Okay. Start implementing functional endpoints. So the assignment is whatever we write in the mobile service. If you don't write, first write mobile service with all the REST controllers and controllers. First complete that assignment. Then the next today's assignment is whatever the methods you see right in the REST mobile controller, all those methods you must implement in our mobile functional endpoint, right? Mobile functional endpoint. You have to try this, and you have to try without mobile functional endpoint also. Okay. The basic is try with functional endpoint, right? And if you get some time and if you wanted to do more R&D, try this one also. Okay, I will import this code into GitHub, two samples, right? Mobiles by ID. I will import this into GitHub and I will share that link. You just clone that project into your local and just don't add the methods into the class. start from zero, right? Take that as a reference, create in separate spring starter project and write your own functional endpoint. At least the service and mobile you can copy paste, no problem. So there is something new that you have to do it on your hands, right? Write one get all mobiles, get mobile by ID, call those methods, and go to functional application class, remove this. If you feel uncomfortable writing in this class, you write a separate configuration class, right? Router configuration like that, you write a separate configuration class and you put all your router configurations over there. That is going to be good, right? That will be good. It will increase readability, right? It's going to increase readability, and the things will have a separate segregation, right? It's good segregation. We will have better readability, right? Get better modularity you're gonna get. So just whatever we are doing in this, other than this main method, put it in a separate config class, right? Router config, like that. You just name it and you put all those things, so you have a good readability and better modularity. So with this, we are done with all, functional endpoints, right? Just quickly go through. So it's going to be the server request. If you want to get the request body, add request body, it's going to be request.get body. And if you want to, by defaultly, it's going to be an object. What you can just say what type you want to typecast it. Request body, you pass string, you will get the request in the JSON format, like string format. And if you wanted to convert that into a particular type, right? Like list of string or something like that, you just say parameterized type reference and pass list of counts. You will get that request converted into a list person, right? So something. And you want to create a map, multi-value map, you just call request.parameters, right? Query parameters. So no more annotations, no request param, no request header, no request body, no response body. Everything is going to be called, right, as a method on the server request. The same thing applicable for server response also. So these are like you have utility methods, right? Server response that okay, and content type and body. Like if you want to give a XML response, just say content type XML, and if you want to give a JSON response, then just say JSON response, right? Produces and consumes, like it works. Okay, and one more important thing is the request and server response, both are immutable classes. Once you create them, you can't change the state. If you're trying to change, there is a new object will be created. By default, server request and server response are immutable, right? Immutable. Okay.
Sunil, one thing, nowadays I'm seeing like most of the things, whatever the inbuilt, right, they're making it as immutable. Like most of the classes, right, they're creating it as immutable only. Like, is it a better approach, or like what's the reason behind it?
Yeah, once you create, anyway, you can't create server request. By default, it's an immutable, right? You're gonna use that. It has only getter method. Server request by default immutable because you are not going to. So what we're gonna create is the server response. So the intention of making this as immutables, once you create the server response, you're not supposed to change. That is what intention, right? So the secret behind making these classes immutable, once you create it, that's it, it's final, right? Once you decided everything, then only you create the final response. Okay, so that is what intention of making these classes are immutable. If you're trying to change anything, then there is a new server response object will be created. So once you complete the process and finally you create the server response, right? So that is what is the intention of making this as immutable. Okay, so yeah, so you get some details like how to create a basic router and some nested routers, right? These are the examples of nested routers. And running on server, you don't need to worry. It's automatically. Spring Boot takes care about it. Just ignore this concept, right? You don't need to do. So this is a plain native Spring MVC. That's why he's talking configuration net enable MVC. We don't need to do anything. Spring Boot will automatically recognize this router functions, and you see here there are more than one router, right? More than one router function can do the same thing. You can create more than one router function if you want. Okay. So if you want to some filtering concept, you can do it. Right, before is like and after. Right, filter. Do filter method before, right? So here it's going to be filter before and after. So this is going to be pre-processing. After is going to be post-processing. Before is going to be pre-processing. After is going to be post-processing. Okay. So with this, we are done with functional endpoints. For sure, you have to do hands-on to get some idea. It is easy thing, right? Easy thing. It's pure Java concept. At least we don't have any annotations to make us confused. So whatever you're gonna do, it's going to be some callback mechanism plus some Java code, native Java code with Java 8 Lambda expression, right? So if you do more hands-on, you really feel very much comfortable and you don't write any annotated controllers in the future, right? You just started um, adapting in the functional endpoints, right? You just get rid of annotations in your Spring MVC, but you need to do lots of hands-on, right? Lots of hands-on. Each method in the handler class is going to be on handler function, right? So it's just a simple comparison, and like some portion is callback and some portion is native Java 8 lambda expression. It's all about functional endpoints. But make sure zero annotations we're gonna use, right? At least the controller, no rest controller, no controller. Whenever you are writing functional endpoints, no controller, no rest controller, no request mapping, no response body, no request body, no request mapping, no get. Right? So all those things should done like in Java, native Java. So with this, we are done with the functional endpoints, right? I just made many slides, right? It's like clear, detailed, very detailed information provided here. Right? JDK 1.8 friendly access HTTP request and response mapping. Right? HTTP handler function takes two parameters. One is server request and another one is server response. In simple terminology, we can call JDK 8, right? Friendly access to HTTP request and response. And it includes server request, includes headers, body, method, status. Right? So this is how we play with the server request, right? This is how we play with the server request. And in the next slide, we are talking about like how we're going to implement the handler function. It is just a copy paste from this documentation, right? It's better to go through the documentation instead of going any tutorial or any documentation to provide, right? Everybody does the same like how I did. It's just a simple copy paste. Or sometimes we do copy paste our code, whatever we are writing here, we do. It's like same thing, right? Same thing. Yeah. So yeah, in one slide we discussed about server request. In one slide we discussed about server response, how to request. And in one slide we are discussing about router function. Router. So we're gonna use request predicates, router functions to prepare all this repair. Okay. Yeah, I provided very baseline, right? So go to the documentation, you get more and more information. So this is going to be 100%, right? Whatever we are saying in the documentation, this is going to be 100%. In the future, maybe today it's Spring 5.3, maybe after a couple of months or after a couple of years, it's going to be some Spring 6 or Spring 10. So it is always recommended to refer documentation to learn anything, right? Because this PPT and all, it's like one-time preparation. It may not be updated, right, in the future, but here is the place where Spring people will keep on updating. So just go to spring.io project Spring framework, right? So Spring MVC documentation will always be available latest here, right? So based on the version. So that now right now the latest is 5.3. When I was doing it was like 5.2, something like that. Now it's 5.3. You just go to the documentation and that's what we open, right? Web server. So you get better documentation. Right? So when I was did it was Spring 5.2, now it is Spring 5.3, right? Spring framework 5.3. So obviously there are new things will be added here. So with this, we are done with Spring MVC, RESTful Web Services implementation, right? Two methodologies. One is annotation controller and another functional endpoint. And all the time we followed contract last, right? Contract last mechanism. So let's do a quick recap. We started with Spring MVC, right? We started our first example with servlet, HTTP servlet. Then we wrote dispatcher servlet REST controller. Then we jump into Spring Boot, right? No more configuration required. Just directly write your REST controller, right? REST controller. No web.xml file, no web application initializer, nothing required. Just directly write your REST controller. Spring Boot will take care about it, right? So we spent some time on dispatcher servlet and servlet 3, right? Servlet 3 Java configuration. We understood. We already, I mean, we started with servlet lifecycle. On top of that, we added dispatcher servlet and Spring MVC lifecycle, right? If it is a, I mean, whether it is a Spring MVC, native MVC, or Spring Boot MVC, the lifecycle architecture is still same. Then we started writing our controllers with request mapping, get mapping, post mapping, put mapping, consumes, producers, right? Single method, giving XML response, JSON response based on the header parameters, right? And we also understood path variable, request header, cookie value, request parameter, request response body, HTTP, response entity, request body, HTTP entity, difference between controller and REST controller, difference between response body and response entity, difference between request body and HTTP entity, and some legacy application, right? Some end-to-end navigation, logging in, logging out, right? And those things we already checked the code. And yeah, we understood the difference between redirect and forward. Redirect and forward. I would like to show you the live redirect, right? So actually, the Spring is owned by Pivotal. Right? I don't know whether you know or not. It's actually a few years back. The Spring framework. It's owned by Pivotal, right? Cloud Foundry. But now the Pivotal is owned by some other vendor, right? So some other vendor. So if I just go to browser and type pivotal.io, that is what is the actual official site. So now the Pivotal, it's owned by some other company. So just I'll enter Pivotal.io, it redirects to another site, right? Some VMware company bought Pivotal company. So as soon as I click enter, you see the response header. What are you going to, right? See 301, right? So it's loading Tanju VMware, right? Tanju VMware. So now Pivotal is owned by Tanju VMware. So all Pivotal sites information is moved permanently, right? 301 response status code 301. Any status code with respect to 300 days, it can be 301 or 302, will be defaultly redirected to that location. So where it is going, location https tanju.vmware.com, right? So this is how we do use redirect, right? So it's not a theory concept. I'm showing you the live, right? So Spring bought by Pivotal, now Pivotal bought by Tanjuware. So you just try to navigate to Pivotal, it will be redirected to Tanju VMware, right? So that's how we do use redirect. Forward, it's going to be internal communication. Redirect, it's going to be external communication. And we do have interceptors, filters, right? Cross origin, I will show one demo, small demo later. I don't have the example ready. Once I have the example ready, I'll show you that. And we implemented our first microservices, right? Microservice using REST controller, right? Controller data. And we implemented exception handling and open API documentation we added. And we wrote a client and we invoked the service, get the response, right? And today we completed functional endpoint, right? So there are totally 3 microservices you should have in your workspace. One is my mobile service, another one is mobile service client, and the last one is mobile service functional, right? So mobile service functional is just optional. You just do it for learning purpose. We're gonna use mobile service and mobile service client for our microservices learning. So once we jump into microservices session, we use these concepts, okay? So with this, we are done with Spring MVC. Any questions?
Question will come soon, definitely once we will try this functional, right? Then it will come. little not 100% getting it, so need to try once.
Yeah, so not only with respect to functional endpoint, I'm talking like asking anything which related to Spring MVC or whatever we discussed now, right? So from tomorrow we're gonna learn database integration, right? So we're gonna learn database integration. We're gonna use the same mobile service to integrate with the database, right? So same mobile service integrate with the database. So we're gonna learn like Spring JDBC first, JDBC Spring JDBC. So we're gonna write multiple microservices, right? So one is mobile service. Tomorrow we will start with country service, right? Country service. So for this country service, we're gonna integrate Spring JDBC, right? So one service with Spring JDBC, one service. So mobile service with Spring Data API. Okay. We will write one more service called mobile accessories. That is going to be completely different. Reactive plus MongoDB. Reactive plus MongoDB. Our client will invoke, right? Mobile service client will invoke all these three. Our mobile service client will invoke all these three, and it get the data, accumulated data, and give it back. So from Postman, we will call only client is to make these calls background in the background. Okay, and we will give the accumulated data back. Okay, so that is what is our target. So tomorrow we will start our first like next microservice, country service, and we will integrate with Spring JDBC. So like first 30 to 40 minutes, we can quickly close this current service implementation. Right, it's going to be annotations, REST controller, simple controller class, and later we will integrate with Spring JDBC. So no more hard-coded data going forward. So right now we are getting the data from service class, right? Hard-coded data. Going forward, it's going to be no more hard-coded data. It's going to be direct. It's going to be database integration. Yeah. So just complete the assignments and let me know if you have any doubts. Okay.
Sunil, should I install MySQL or like any other?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah, we are going to use MySQL. Okay, so try to install MySQL database, MySQL workbench. So I'm using some old one, right? The software installed on the machine around 2 years before. So you just might get some latest version. It may not be the 6.3. So you have to install MySQL database and MySQL workbench to connect it to the database, right? So these two things you have to install. And I will share the database details, right? What is the table, what is the data, mock data we're going to create, right? So those details I will share you. Those details are already available. So we no need to focus. We no need to focus on data insertion in the database. It's going to be a simple. I will give you the script. You just import that. I will show you how to import. So the data will be there. Right? The database section will not going to focus much. It's like I will share the data and queries. Okay, data and queries. It's going to be a simple import. But you have to install MySQL database and you have to install MySQL workbench. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
So before session, you do install MySQL and MySQL workbench also.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Anshu, Abhi, Chintesh, Jaga, Sharat, Shiva, Venkat, Vijay.
And Sunil,
Sunil, all videos are uploaded, right?
Yes.
Daily.
Yeah, all videos are uploaded and sharing with you on daily basis.